Hello and welcome to Atomic Facepalm. This guy is Chris.
I'm Bree.
And today on Played in Full, we review Torment, Tides of Numenera. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we appreciate you being here. If you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. And we do lots of reviews like these, and we do new shows and kind of just random stuff related to gaming. So onward to Torment, Tides of Numenera. I think that's the second time ever I've said that name correctly. So we're going to do a little bit more background, at least I want to, on this game, developers, etc., because this game is a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, which is one of those games that I get crapped on all the time because I haven't played it. It's like if you're a PC gamer and you have not played Planescape Torment, oh my god. And I can respect that. It does look like one of those landmark, amazing games. I made up for it by playing this game partially. So, here we go. Developers are in exile. The game was published by Techland. The game is DRM free, which in of itself is a huge thumbs up. That is really cool. Previous games by In Exile were, I have Hunted Bard's Tale Remake. That is not correct. It is Hunted the Demon's Forge. They did the Bard's Tale Remake. They did Wasteland 2. Wasteland 2 is pretty recent, a couple of years ago. So, yeah, some of those weird review scores on Steam notwithstanding, for the most part, it's had generally good praise.
Yeah, I didn't look at Steam scores. I don't usually go to Steam scores. But, any of the major outlets for gaming, I saw good reviews. People have complaints for sure, but in general, it's a gem of a game. It's like you're not coming across this kind of game every day. So
Loved it!
Yeah,
loved it so much.
Which I think so. I did that review before of the early access portion, and I loved it then, and I love it now, and it's just get that right out of the way. We both enjoyed this game quite a bit.
I posited earlier yesterday that for me, this has now usurped the Game of the Year throne for me. There's a lot of time to go in 2017. I get it, but for me, this is up there right now. So other games are now to beat. I don't think you said it was quite up there for you for Game of the Year, but it was,
I think it's too early. I think it's way too early. This has been a crazy good year for games.
It has been. I haven't even gotten. Better.
I mean, it's a good game. I don't know if I need to rank it in a list yet, or feel like I should be pressured into it.
So much fun.
I don't feel like. It almost feels like it should be a game that's outside of that because it's just so different. You know what I mean? Like we get a lot of these other games where they're a certain type of game. This is a platformer, this is this. It's kind of its own thing. Like, yes, it's an RPG, but even in that standards, it's not about crafting systems. It's not about min-maxing your character's stats. It's not about loot collecting. It's not about treasure collecting. It's about story. And that is so different than any other games around that it kind of is in its own little place in my heart. It's just one of those games that I'm so glad I experienced it.
So, yeah, the RPG label is really just the blueprint. It's the clay they use to mold this game. There are RPG elements.
Well, I think that's the problem is RPG has become something kind of different where role-playing game is what RPG game should mean, and that's what this is. You're
role-playing.
Yeah, role-playing. You're playing the role of this character who you kind of create. You're not stepping into a, named person. So you kind of create your own character and role-play them, and that is critical. How you make your choices throughout the game is critical to your character and the story. It keeps track of what you've done and applies.
So I saw some complaints about people saying, well, can I customize my character like, in Conan, and can I do it like you do in Skyrim and these other games like Mass Effect? And the answer is no. I understand that's a part of a role-playing game, but I feel like that's what those other games do. And I'm fans of those games. But you make your character, but then the rest of it's very linear to a certain degree, and you can kind of feel the gears cranking behind the scenes, trying to force this into a role-playing atmosphere. This game is none of that. This game is you do pretty much whatever the hell you want to do, which is a bold claim, but you more or less get there in this game.
Mm-hmm. Through talking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I think we should maybe put that right up front. This is an interactive novel.
Mm-hmm. And I forget how many words were in this game, and it was like 1 million or something. Like it's like a big, fat, thick novel worth of stuff in here.
6 writers.
Yeah.
6 writers. That, folks, is a lot. To put this kind of story together, to make everything connect back and forth, or it makes sense, You don't have these weird causality loops where one thing doesn't make sense in the other, and it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. And so normally I show a lot of gameplay in these videos. I will do that here, but a lot of what the gameplay is just reading. And I don't know if that can, I mean, I'm showing it on screen for sure during the game, review, but you really need to be reading it because then it's all in your head. It really is. It's not just about what you're seeing on the screen.
I am very curious to see what younger people would think of this game. Now, I didn't play Planescape Torment, but some of my favorite games of all time are the Blackout games like Fallout 1, Fallout 2. This game right here, Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura, also made by some of the Fallout guys. I celebrate a wide diversity of role-playing games, but the really weird, unique ones are up there for me. Mm-hmm. This game is weird and unique. I would posit one of the most unique games ever made. Honestly, it's up there.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique world. So it's just you're set like a billion years in the future in this world that's got layers on layers of different things. So there's like ancient tech, which is almost like magic, left behind in pieces. So you'll be walking through a courtyard and there'll be an old ancient clock that you've got to unlock. And, so it's not just one civilization. It's like 9 different civilizations built up on each other. And it becomes so strange and so bizarre. There's different planes of existence and different mind spaces that anything you can think of is going to happen. It's just really bizarre.
It is an official tabletop RPG system, Numenera, created by Monty Cook. Story involves the main character who's called the Last Castoff. It's not really a name, it's a label, basically. Mm-hmm. So the idea is there's this fellow called the Changing God. He is a person who has sort of achieved immortality throughout time. They don't really say how old he is. It's posited maybe hundreds of years old, even older, maybe a millennia of age. The guy started trying to extend himself. He figured out how to do it by popping into new bodies he creates. He stays there for 10 or 20 years, pops out, but then when he leaves, the body becomes a real person. They gain consciousness, hence cast-off. Mm-hmm. So the idea is he's been doing it for so long, there's been tons of cast-offs with their own personalities. Yeah,
and the whole world is kind of shaped by these people that are cast-offs, because you can kind of tell immediately they usually have tattoos or some sort of thing that's immediately clear that, oh, this is a cast-off. So when you're talking with people that you can, they're like, oh, they put you in that category. And much of the factions and different things going on in the history of the world is shaped by these cast-offs, because there's thousands of them everywhere, and they have kind of certain powers and abilities, because as he's gone through time, he's kind of tweaked himself here, tweaked himself there, so he's kind of perfecting the body that he's in.
Each cast-off has a very specific purpose, it seems, whether it's, an assassin or a scientist or a tinkerer, you name it. Mm-hmm. Each cast-off fills a specific role that the Changing God needs to use at that time. Mm-hmm. And he gets rid of them and seemingly doesn't care.
And so when you start this game, it's kind of a huge thing, because you are literally waking up as this last cast-off, and you're kind of like, holy shit.
Soaring through the sky.
Just falling from the sky, and you're like, I'd say the first hour or so of this game is just like, if you're
I loved it. It was such an assault on the senses.
It is such an assault on the senses of like, what is going on? Like, what?
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a little bit of a hindrance for some people to get into that world. I mean, it is, once you get past those first hour or two and get into the game, then things start connecting together. There's just a lot thrown at you at first. And
I love that. I know people won't. I love that, because it feels like culture shock. It feels like you're experiencing this world the way this last cast-off would experience, where you're like, what is going on? I don't know what's happening. This is weird and foreign to me. I say thumbs up for that. I think that's a bold move.
It's an up and down thing for me. When there is so much coming at me at once, I just can't keep it all in my head. And there's no real wiki inside the game guide.
That would have been helpful.
It would have really been helpful. So there's a lot of endless stuff. There's the endless battle and the endless gate and this and that. And so endless. I ended up getting a few things confused, and I was really trying to pay attention and be like, I'm going to experience this whole story. But it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. There's a lot of different factions. And sometimes, right as you get off of the thing, you go into this town, or city actually.
Yeah, Sagas Cliffs.
Sagas Cliffs, and there is a ton of people to talk to, and they all kind of interlink, and they all have different opinions, and they all are kind of pushing their own agenda, and I wasn't sure where I was going. It's just a little bit much for me.
And that's honestly the biggest part of the game, I felt like, was Sagas Cliffs. Maybe the Bloom But it's yeah, like you're saying, you get thrown right into it, and it's like you have a million quests. You start talking to so many people, and yeah, again, I enjoyed that. I can understand the criticism of people saying it's too much for me. I get that. I do. I just like that they had the balls to do it.
I'm not saying it's too much. I'm saying to people that might feel like it's too much, stick with it. Stick with it just a little bit longer than where you're at, and it really pays off, because then things start to click into place.
Yeah.
And it's just this completely fleshed out world. And the problem is there's the main quest and there's side quests, but they're not side quests in the way that normal. Really. It's not like go and gather 15 peace bloom and then come back. It's like make life-changing decisions for these people, and live with the consequences of that. It's not just little here and there stuff. It's much more deeper than that. Like, what does life mean?
So the very first, not the first game, but the spiritual predecessor to this, Planescape Torment, was the main point of that game was what can change a man. That was the underlying concept, and that's kind of what you get to at the very end of the game. This doesn't have that necessarily, but it's based on philosophy. It's based on cause and effect. I wouldn't say there's good and evil in this game. No,
and that's what was really hard for me, is that you're going through these worlds, the world, and you're making all these decisions, and sometimes you've got 5 or 6 choices, and none of them are immediately clear, like, this is the right thing. This will make us happy. A lot of times you're choosing, well, am I going to piss off this guy and this guy, or can I kind of find an even ground where I only piss off this guy a little bit? So there's no, like, you're good by doing this.
No, and chances are, no matter what decision you make, there's going to be repercussions of some sort. Mm-hmm. There's never, I don't think I did any quest where it was like, you can make everybody happy. It's almost impossible. You can certainly be the diplomat and try and make people kind of happy, but for the most part, eventually that'll catch up with you, and there will be things that will happen because of that. It does have your traditional mechanics, like it has stats. But it's different in the way this works. So in this game, you have speed, might, and intellect. Mm-hmm. Those are your 3 main components that you can adjust. Unlike other role-playing games where health is the main factor, or mana, or whatever you want to say, this game, you put numbers into those 3 stats, and as you do certain tasks, those stats actually deplete.
Which is their effort system. So you kind of are using those stats all the time. So if you're a really smart person and you're going through different, text dialogue, you're going to use your smart stats towards that. So you're just using your stat pools to kind of boost your already base abilities.
Right. And you have skills and abilities like you maybe would expect. But again, this is not a world, this is as far from traditional fantasy as you can get, I feel like. Sure, it's medieval themed, in the sense that this current civilization is in like what we would consider medieval times, but a billion years in the future, you're talking like...
Yeah, so a lot of your characters are using melee weapons and that kind of thing, and science is kind of the magic of it, but it's also got this sci-fi kind of twist where there's all kinds of weird, bizarre ships and, tech. So you're oftentimes rooting around in a machine that's thousands of years old, trying to get it to work again, and using your lore machinery skills to kind of unlock that thing, hack that thing.
Yeah, it's not really magic, it's just like nanotechnology or... So you have a nano, a glaive, and you have a jack. Those are your character classes.
Which is warrior, thief, mage, for the most part.
Yeah.
We actually ended up playing the same exact character, almost exactly, without even trying.
So on that note, though, we did play pretty much the same. We both went down. So there's tides, right? The tides of Numenera thing. The tides are like, it's a little bit of a spoiler, I suppose. I won't go into too much detail. Tides are something that works in the background that influences the world.
Yeah, but it's more like it's not alignment for sure. I'm not saying because it's shifting, but it's a kind of like this is how your characters made different choices, and so you're of that tide, and it's the gold tide, and that usually stands for being
selflessness.
Yeah, selflessness, or you're really interested and inquisitive, and that's the blue tide. And so as you're doing these different interactions, you're changing.
Yeah.
Your character's changing, though you kind of narrow it down after a while.
So you and I both ended up being pure gold.
Yeah.
So we were always the selfless.
Well, I was always gold blue.
Oh, were you? Okay. Yeah. I was gold blue to start, and then near the end, I was solid gold. And that basically influences how people react to you. It does not limit what you can do, which is nice. It's like they don't put these hard limits like a normal game would, which I enjoy. So yeah, that goes up and down depending on what decisions you want to make throughout the game. despite us playing the same character, basically pretty much down to the T, including some of the same stats and stuff we chose.
Yeah, same skills, same class, and then general, alignment of the same.
Which was not planned, by the way. That's just, we both did it. We had vastly different experiences playing this game. I'm talking very different experiences.
There was like one particular quest that we were talking about, and you had solved it a wholly different way than I had. It was like 100% different. Like we went down and talked to different people, did different things. It was like 100% different. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I could have solved it that way. So definitely this is not a game about fighting. And I mean, you can, if you want to play that character that fights and, pulls the weapon whenever, but that isn't the only path. You don't have to, come into a crisis combat and fight that people. You can, turn on different items, hack different things, or talk to people and talk them down, persuade them, intimidate them.
Combat usually, combat in the sense of going up and bashing guys with weapons, is usually the last resort.
It was for the character I played. I definitely liked the.
I think it's geared that way. You certainly can. If you want to go in like Conan the Barbarian and smash stuff, you can do that. It's going to be tough. I mean, it's really not a game that's made for that. They give you the option, and it's tricky. You could do it, I suppose. But it really more wants you to think things through. It's a cerebral game. Mm-hmm. It's not a hack and slash. It's not Diablo. So, I mean, because of that, so what happens is when you go into combat, it's called a crisis. And during this crisis situation, like you're talking about, you can interact with stuff, but there's only so many of them throughout the whole game. So it's not like you're going through and, grinding or anything. There's only so many levels you can get, I imagine, because there's just only so much experience you can get throughout the whole game. So leveling up is somewhat important, but it's not like the goal of the game, I would say.
No, I did, so Crisis is their combat, and I had an issue. I had a hard time with combat in the beginning because I was so intellectual, and I put points into like reading minds and, talking to people that the first few combats were pretty tough for me. And so I shied away from combat almost completely until later on. And then by then I had enough levels and enough skills that it was almost then swinging the other direction where things were a little easier.
Yeah,
I say it was one of my complaints is that the combat wasn't completely balanced, but I wasn't there for the combat either, so.
Well, one is turn-based, which is a barrier for some people. I love turn-based.
It's not that it was turn-based, it's that it's turn-based, but you're usually fighting 10 plus monsters, and you've got to wait for them to do their turn. I have no problems with turn-based, that was not. It was just that it's a set turn, and then you're waiting for this guy to move, and then attack, and move, and attack, and move, and attack.
I was surprised there was no fast turn-based option. So a game called Fallout Tactics, which was based off the Fallout universe, did that very well, where they had your traditional slow turn-based, and they had a fast version. It was weird that this didn't have that. Where basically it would just be the guys just teleport instead of going through those long animations.
A lot of those games have that kind of speed-up thing.
I liked it. I like the slow, methodical turn-based. I enjoy that just because that gets back to like Fallout 1 and 2 for me. So it's nostalgic, but
I don't feel like it's adding anything. I don't know. I, in general, thought combat was just a wee bit clunky to me.
Yeah, and that was the main complaint, to my understanding, of Planescape Torment, was the combat was just shitty. So
I'm not saying this is shitty. It came into, later on in the game, I felt like then it came into its own. Mm-hmm. Then I had enough skills that things started getting a little more, I'm moving guys around, doing more things. That was more fun than the beginning. The beginning was just kind of like I had 2 skills and I had to
Yeah, I had a different experience. I think again we had different NPCs in our parties, which probably changed things up a bit. I know it did a big time for the characters we chose. I think we counted 6 people that we could tell that you could have join. But there's probably more, as far as I could tell. Maybe, but we ended up recruiting different people. And this isn't just like where you get them and you just turn and burn them. This is being a story-driven game. You pick up these people and you start to learn about them. And it's hard to let them go when you've had them a while.
And each character kind of had its own story arc.
Absolutely.
For the most part. So you were kind of going through the whole game, and only at the very end did I complete some of their quests to kind of figure out what was going on with them.
Yeah, there are companion quests which you can do and take quite possibly most of the game to do it. Can we just give a special shout-out real quick to Rin? The character created by Patrick Rothfuss.
Yeah, she was definitely. These are good characters, all of them.
Yeah, it was hard. So you were telling me about Rin. I don't know much about Patrick Rothfuss. You actually introduced me to him. So I was like, this character, whatever, little girl. So I picked her up to complete a quest, and I was like, I'm just gonna get rid of her. It was heartbreaking. Like, she made me feel like a miserable, terrible person.
Yes, she should.
And I ended up keeping her and to get rid of one of my other guys, Tiber, who I'd kind of fallen in love with. And I was like, man, this is the worst. It's like, no matter who I'm making leave my party, I feel like a monster. And that's just a testament to the storytelling and the talent behind the scenes. So, yeah. Getting back to the cast-off part. So, once you get down and like you're saying, get to the huge Sagas cliffs, you get the idea that the cast-offs are not the greatest people, or at least they're not seen that way.
It seems that they live a lot longer. They have healing properties. That
They're functionally immortal, basically.
Yeah, so they're around for a long time, and I think, they're kind of jerks. And that is kind of thrown in your face again and again, that the cast-offs just cause pain, the cast-offs just do this.
Well, they started the endless battle, which you talked about earlier.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're not the greatest people, and you're immediately stamped with that right on your head. And
literally
so as you're
stamped with
becoming this human and trying to figure out your place in the world, everybody's like, oh, shit, this cast-off. And some people even recognize you, because at one point the changing god was inside of your body, walking around, doing things, being a jerk. And so people are like, oh, I recognize you. And you're like, I don't know anything.
Please don't hurt me.
I'm whatever.
And so speaking of immortality, one of the great things I want to talk about before I forget it is death in this game is treated very uniquely. It's almost beneficial at times to die. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't always happen. There are some times where you can die and it's game over and you gotta load the game. I would say 70% of the time, if not more, you end up going to something called the labyrinth, which is like this thing inside your mind. So the only way to get to the labyrinth is to die. That's it. And so it's like sometimes you want to do these quests inside your mind. You're like, well, how do I kill myself to get there?
Yeah.
Or how do I get hypnotized or whatever? I mean, there are other ways to get there than dying, but that's the quickest way. And I love that they took this stance of dying isn't really the worst thing. I can't think of many games, maybe other than like some stuff like Dark Souls, etc. But this took a unique approach to it.
Yeah, so failure wasn't always the worst thing. And not just death failure, but, failure of a quest or something sometimes resulted in cool things.
One of my complaints, and take my complaints as very minor criticisms. This is, like, I could just celebrate this game and talk about it for hours and hours. One of my minor complaints was I didn't feel like I failed enough. I don't know if that was just the character build I tried, or the choices I did. I think I failed 3 or 4 skill checks throughout the whole damn game. I played for 50 hours. So that was strange to me. Did you fail a lot, like when you were going through it?
No, but I definitely made wrong choices. Not my skill checks didn't fail, because once I decided what I wanted to do, I'd put enough effort into it.
That's what I'm talking about. I wish those could have been harder, I guess.
Okay. I mean, I definitely failed more than 3 or 4 times. I don't think that's the small. I mean, I didn't think it was that not noteworthy. It's not a complaint for me.
Okay. Because you can also use your companions. So, like, if your companions are really speedy or they're powerful, you can use them in place of your own skill checks.
So I built them out. So I had my strong might smashing guy, and I had my quick fingers guy, and my intellect guy. So I felt like I built myself for those things.
Now, I will say, on that same note, this is not a game where I feel like we even need to talk about difficulty. It's more than that. Like, it's not like, whoa, it's too easy or it's too hard. There were certainly some very challenging spots that I definitely game overed on, but for the most part, it just felt like you were going through a story. And I think that's what's important. Now, speaking of some issues, I will say there was a lot of bugs when I played for mine, which is unfortunate. I couldn't complete a certain quest. No matter how many different times I tried it, it would just lock the screen. There were some times where a body would fall on an item I needed to pick up, and I couldn't click on the item because the body was there. I couldn't get to a certain door because something was in the way. I couldn't click on my inventory sometimes unless I alt-tabbed. So there were a few bugs there. Nothing totally game-breaking.
You actually had a lot more bugs than I did. So I did have a few bugs. Mostly it would be like either there's an alert when you complete a quest or a quest is updated. That would pop up in the corner, and sometimes it would stick there until I reload. That was one of the few things that I had consistently. I did have one freeze where it just kind of like, as I was dying, the whole thing locked up and I had to just reload the last save. Yeah. But I didn't have quite as many as you did.
But yeah, and the bugs for me weren't major, other than the one quest I wanted to do a certain way. That was one time out of the whole game. So
if we're doing complaints, definitely the in-game wiki or guide or some sort of thing. Like, you definitely have a quest journal, but I just wanted a repository for all the information that was just being
there's
thrown
so
out.
much. I know the time of these is over. I understand, rest in peace. But a manual for this game, and like you were saying, it's possible if you're a Kickstarter backer, maybe you got something like this.
I'm not sure what they got, but yeah, that would have been helpful. Just any sort of, I even searched out after a few days with this game, I searched out like an online wiki, and those aren't fleshed out enough to really be helpful and kind of put some pieces together for me.
I will say, being wary of spoilers, I think most people can police themselves to do this. When we played Darkest Dungeon, my friend Evan Lottie said, dude, don't be afraid to use a guide. If you are feeling lost in this game, you enjoy it, don't be afraid to use a guide.
I don't know if they can find a guide.
Okay, so Game Pressure. Go to Game Pressure, type in Game Pressure Tides of Numenera. I did it. And I actually used that a few times. I would go to it after I'd done a quest, and I wanted to see... I wanted to see what maybe I missed. So I would go through it, and I'd go back and read, okay.
This is why we're doing this game review 3 weeks later.
Well, I'm also a completionist, so again, the 50 hours there is probably starting to
that's our time together, right?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I feel like I spent 50 hours in it.
No.
Oh. Well, it felt like 50 hours of goodness. I also want to give a special shout out to the music. Subtle, very subtle, but really foreboding, and I don't know, I liked it.
It was good. Sometimes it felt like there's a certain like a engine on, like a Star Trek engine that's been on forever, and I felt like that sound was used so much that I would just be like, okay, he's playing that game because I can hear that sound right now. It's like this.
Sorry. I'm one of the few gamers that still uses 5.1 surround sound speakers, so yeah.
On all the time instead of headphones like polite people.
Wow. A deep cut. So I just want to give a special shout out to a very funny event that I enjoyed immensely. It's one of the most enjoying things I've ever had in an RPG, which is you come across a little Numenera called I think they call it a candy dispenser. It's a living Pez dispenser with like a little gizmo from Gremlins on it, and he squeezes his little hand and he pukes up a candy thing, and he squeezes his hand again, and he pukes up another candy thing, and then he dies. And you feel terrible, but it was just that whole interaction.
And it's not given to you, like you kind of see the item that you've gotten, and then it tells you, this is a cylinder with a little face on the top, and it's got its hand sticking out, and you're like, huh. And it's like, do you want to squeeze its hand? I'm like, sure, I want to squeeze its hand. And then all of a sudden, a little blue candy comes out that's shaped exactly like a Pez, and I'm like, oh, it's a Pez dispenser. And then it gives you the option to shake his hand again, and I mouse over the Pez item, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good item.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm going to squeeze his hand again, and then he just dies.
The most horrific death you could possibly imagine. His eyes explode, his fur falls off, he decomposes.
And then you're given the option to root through his body and get anything that you might want from it. And so, of course, I did, but then I felt so dirty about that. I wish I hadn't done that.
So I felt so terrible. Because you pry open a Pez dispenser and his guts explode all over you.
And you get a little piece out of there that's helpful, but I kind of wish I hadn't done that.
But again, it was just the quickest range of emotions I felt in like a minute. It was like elation, adorable, like, oh, that's bad, oh, super sad. And then, depression. So, speaking of moments that happen in the game, I believe Bree has something we want to talk about real quick.
I actually found this on Twitter. Zycon did this kind of tweet log of everything weird that happened to them in the game, because this is a game that's just like madness all the time. There's just such weird things.
Yeah.
So things I've had done so far in Torment Tides of Numenera. I had an alien explain human reproduction to me, waited for a bureaucrat for so long I got a debuff, let a corpse-eating cult eat my still living and apparently delicious body, helped a robot have children, which was one of my favorite moments.
Me too, it's up there, yeah.
Drank actual jet fuel.
Did that.
Let a drone cut open my skull to jam machinery inside. And I'll link to the full thing below. I'm kind of skimming through these because it's a lot of stuff. So many weird things.
So good.
Reached level 2.
Which is kind of hard to do in this game.
Yeah,
you go through tiers, and each tier is like 4 of them. Eventually you get to a different level. Yeah.
Have promised a man to duel to the death. Died and said duel to the death. Failed a quest because the quest giver's house fell into the ocean while I wasn't looking. Offered to join 3 people merged into one.
Oh yeah, I did that too.
Learned a language of smells to negotiate with a species that thinks humans are non-sentient. stepped into any number of portals without a clue where they lead, spoken to a living skin of 3 flayed humans, kicked a god out of my head, squeezed a giant cyst until a creature came out, invited the victims of a train crash to come live in my head, was refused bubbles, stole the brain of a space station, got eaten by a pink teddy bear in a happy vision, slept inside the folds of a hernia.
Yeah, so I actually found that option but didn't do it, sadly. You did, though.
I rolled around in that hernia so much, slept up in there twice.
That reminds me, though, and I'm glad you read those because it sparked this. Sleeping in this game restores health, but it can also screw you over because this is not a game where sleeping and it's like you can just go back and do the quest where the guy was going to die. So if there's an execution that's going to happen, you want to help that person not be executed, don't go sleep twice because they'll be executed. Because that's what happens when you sleep overnight.
Yeah,
so,
there was things like that for me as well, where I kind of talked to 2 people on a side of a dispute, and I was like, well, I'm not ready to make my decision on how to resolve that dispute. I'm going to go do some other stuff. I came back later, and then one guy had killed the other guy, and that was that. They're like, yeah, we waited for you, and you didn't do anything, so we killed him.
Too busy getting the drinks over there at the Fifth Eye Tavern.
Squeezing cysts and getting their sweet juices.
Yeah. So, man, I mean, and you could probably read through a list of that for hours. And that's what kind of game this is. It's that game of just like, oh my god, this was so cool. Oh, this was so cool. This was so weird. And
I just kept thinking that I'd come across the weirdest thing I've ever seen in a game, and then all of a sudden I'd come across something I'm like, no, that's the weirdest thing ever that I've seen in a game.
Oh yeah. Would you recommend Torment Tides of Numenera?
Absolutely. If you're not turned off by a reading game at all, then go play this game. Stop what you're doing. I mean, I know that this has been a year with tons of awesome games, but this is one that is worth playing. It's just so special.
Please play this game. For me, it's a type of game that defines PC gaming. I know this came out on multi-platforms, but it's just like, this to me is what a great PC game does. It's quick saves, there's no checkpoints, it's story-driven. It's just everything that I want a game to be. Please play it. It's amazing. Now, that said,
spoilers.
Let's get into it. So, what did you think of the ending? One of the many, many endings that you can choose. But, you know, no matter what ending you choose, the overall plot kind of is the same. In other words, there's the sorrow, which you figure out is stalking you throughout the game, trying to kill you, and you kind of sort of meet the changing god. Sort of.
It's sort of, yeah. A lot of things get wrapped up towards the end. I really liked that. I felt like a lot of loose threads kind of came back together. There's kind of this sub-story that's happening, that happened before you were born, that comes in, and you get to learn about that. I like the ending. And then there's the final ending where you kind of make your final choice. You know, you've made a lot of choices up to this point, but this is the one you're kind of saying, this is how I want the world to be. Yeah. And I felt like there was many options there. I was actually really stuck. That was one of those key highlighting moments where I was like, I actually have no idea what to do right now. And I kind of sat there, narrowed it down to 2, and then I kind of went back and forth, and then chose one, which I felt was good. And so my final choice, I felt like it fit my character for sure. And then you get kind of feedback from the game. You're like, oh, that makes sense what you're doing. And then, of course, I saved and immediately reloaded right before that choice and then tried out all the other choices. There was 2 that kind of fit my character. The others were like, ooh, not good, but...
Yeah, and it sounds like, I didn't do this, but you fought the sorrow, which isn't... But it didn't seem like you could beat the sorrow.
It didn't... that was one of the ones that gave me a game over on that final thing. I don't know if I had done it... Maybe there was a tree in there which I had chosen a different way to fight the sorrow. Maybe I could have gotten it.
Now, it's revealed that the sorrow is this, like, eternal... basically unstoppable security system that one of the civilizations developed. So you learn that the tides you've been manipulating, it's highly destructive. It's almost like the warp from Warhammer 40k, where if you access it, you can kill like thousands of people.
Well, it seemed more like there was kind of checks and balances and natural order to things. It almost felt like, you know, Death's design, and you kind of messed with things and lived longer than you should, and Death was the sorrow and kind of coming back and be like, hey, no, you don't be doing that, you're fucking shit up.
Yeah.
And so I felt like it was okay that I couldn't kill the sorrow. I don't feel like you should be able to kill this like every time you've come into contact with the sorrow himself or herself or whatever, the being, the sorrow, that thing is doing like a bazillion damage.
Yeah, literally like 60,000 hit points when you have like 40.
Yeah, and so like 5 levels and a couple of weeks in the game shouldn't let me defeat an all-powerful, I don't give a crap who I am.
Yeah,
you know,
I guess that's true. And one thing I didn't want to talk about pre-spoilers was the mirror casters, because I think people would be. It's a nice surprise. Then you can kind of go back in time, and this cast-off was made to alter tides, basically alter timelines and alter personalities. And so basically, when you go into a mirror, it's like a whole different screen, like an actual.
Yeah, it's like a memory. You're going into someone else's memory and then changing things, and it's a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and through these you discover that the people have tried to kill the sorrow. It's basically invincible. You can't. Like, they try everything. You just can't do it. So your option is to run. So yeah, I did the one ending where you sacrifice yourself and everyone gets collected into the daughter of the changing god. So it turns out, and I love this about the story, there weren't any like cheap gotcha moments, like, I don't know, in a show like Lost tried to do. This was more like the changing god had a motivation, which was his daughter died. He was trying to bring her back to life. And that's what started this whole pattern of getting into new bodies, etc. So he tried to resurrect her. He thought he did it. In the process, he also put himself in another clone. And then from there, he kind of started, doing this whole changing god thing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like where you kind of understand the history finally at the end there, where things get tied together, that I felt like this is one of the few times where I really liked an ending of a game. I think I've disagreed with you on a few games we've played recently where I didn't enjoy the ending quite as much, where this is one where it tied up nicely to me.
Absolutely.
Where you're understanding who the people that you've been dealing with all this time, what their motivations were, what was going on right before the moments that you were born, all that stuff kind of came together. And
this had a fantastic story arc where it was like, you had the beginning, you learn the character, you had that fall of despair, which, since we're in spoiler territory, is when Male Avest, or however you say that, the sanctuary of the cast-offs gets completely annihilated. You think at that point you're on the verge of getting rid of the sorrow, and then all of a sudden everyone just dies. And then you have the redemption at the end, and you have that nice part where it finishes. It's like, here's what happens.
One of the things I really enjoyed about this game is after you complete it, it kind of does this thing like in a movie where it tells you where they are now. So it goes through every, a lot of the characters that you've encountered, whether it's a companion you took or you didn't take. So you get to hear about the companions you didn't take, and some of the major, quests where there was somebody will tell you where they are now. And that was one of those key, I was like, nice. That was a really nice thing to add to a game.
Seeing Rin again brought tears to my eyes. Like, seeing her come back. Eratus was my favorite character out of the whole game. He starts off this really stupid, hilarious, kind of dumb hero, and you eventually learn he's actually really tragic. He was like a shepherd that got possessed by basically machine spirits.
Yeah, I didn't like Eratus as much. That's why I didn't take him. I was just like, oh my god, go. You're just too annoying for me. He was always yelling and shouting, and everything was about me and Eratus. And I'm like, no, I'm the one that's special.
But really, he was being tortured because the machines were using his body as a vessel, and he had to sit inside himself and watch these things try and kill him just because they're entertained by that, because they're malfunctioning.
Yeah, I just...
not
the companion for me.
Yeah, but again, very cool arcs. So near the end, you kind of get to meet the changing god, sort of. What did you think of the changing god, in quotation marks, because as you find out, he kind of died. He's not really the changing god.
I think that you didn't like because you didn't feel like he was important enough, maybe, or you've been built up. And
yeah, I felt like throughout the game you catch fleeting moments of him. You go through the mirror casters and you interact with him through other people directly. You have this sort of notion that you're going to confront him, and I feel like they kind of do build that up. That at some point you're going to meet him, and some shit's going to go down.
And everywhere you go, everybody's always talking about the changing god, and you are always allowed to ask about the changing god to just about anybody throughout the game. So it is a build-up.
He's an ever-present figure, equally on par with the sorrow as far as what's going on. So you finally get to meet what you think is him, or he thinks is him, and it turns out he was actually killed right before the game started, is what it implies. And the changing god is just a fragment of a memory. It's like an implant, or...
You kind of made a save point inside of this staff.
Yeah.
And then that kind of got merged into your brain. So he's kind of in your brain and actually tries to take over at some point. And you're like, no, fuck you.
And you easily beat him.
I actually wish I'd saved at that point and tried letting him.
It game overs. I tried that.
Okay.
It's immediate game over. It's, and you're absorbed back and you die. That makes sense.
Okay.
So my complaint, I don't know how to put it that way, just my opinion, is I was expecting a much more deep and drawn out interaction between you and the changing god, because again, he's kind of created a life of hell for you to a certain degree, and a lot of other of the cast-offs. I really wanted to see that kind of back and forth and struggle, maybe not a violent struggle, but I wanted to see a lot of clash of philosophy. Instead, I got a couple of unique dialogue options that lasted 10 minutes, but it kind of felt unearned that I was able to convince him so quickly that he's not really the changing god, and he's just like, okay, bye, poof.
Yeah. I kind of felt like I felt like that was the right thing, because he's built up so often as being this god when he's not. He's just a guy. He's a guy that, tried to save his daughter and then got immortality, and then was kind of a douchebag to like everybody involved everywhere.
He's a very terrible person.
He is a pretty terrible person, and so you definitely get that conflict with him at all times, but it's not about him. Like he started this thing in motion, but it's about the cast-off. It's about all these people that he's left behind and their effects on the sorrow and the world around them. So the real person is the sorrow. That's where the things need to be resolved. So I kind of did enjoy that. It's like, oh, you finally get there, and oh, you're already dead anyways, and you're kind of just a douche, and you're not as cool as you thought you were. You can die like anybody else.
Yeah, he's a person.
He's a person.
I thought maybe they would do something like where you could actually recruit him to help you. Like you would be that much of a convincing, persuasion-driven character that you could like, hey, I'm actually going to change your mind, pal. I'm going to make you join my party. That was not an option. It really was
I didn't expect that to. He seemed like the kind of person that was so
stubborn and arrogant.
So, I mean, there's been this endless battle between his people and the cast-offs for all these thousands of years. It's like, he's not changing his mind. He actually seemed like he had a good relationship with the first cast-off for a while until things went sour. Yeah. So at first he was kind of cool with the cast-offs, and then it just didn't work for him and didn't fit his life.
Well, like most people, you think you're pretty fine and normal, and then you get a taste of absolute power, and you see what that does. Mm-hmm. And I think that was accurately represented here. He kind of was like, my daughter's, it'd be nice to have her back, but I'm just going to keep doing different stuff here. Bye. So, yeah, I mean, it's, again, I don't know if complaint is the right word. It's just my opinion was I was expecting more.
A lot of people actually said that they didn't like the ending, or that it came too abruptly.
No, I don't think that's the case.
I don't think that's the case. I didn't. This is one of those games where I actually liked the ending completely, like all of it.
It felt incredibly satisfying, like you were talking about how it talks about all the people that you've met and what happens, even people that were seemingly inconsequential, like the stitching, or however you say that word, there's little smelling, the like insects that talk through smell. It talks about what happens to them. It talks about people you met in a bar, a couple of kids you met. I love that. That everything you did had importance. And
you get to hear about it and understand how it affected, what you did changed everything. So.
Yeah. So I think that is going to do it. Unless there's anything else you want to touch on real quick?
No. Just, if you played this game and I'd love to hear your comments on kind of what you... I definitely would. I almost want to play this game again as more of an aggressive character or a different character. So if anybody played that, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this ending were.
Yeah, and obviously if you haven't put this together yet, we both give it big enthusiastic thumbs up, 100%. So thank you everyone for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, consider subscribing, and we will see you next time. Good luck and have fun.